German pilots scoffed at Unescorted bombers. Until P-51, Escorts turned Berlin into rubble, March 6, 1944. 11:47 hours, 22,000 feet above Brandenburg, Germany. Oberleutnant Franz Stigler adjusts his oxygen mask and scans the horizon through the canopy of his Messerschmitt Bf 109 G6. 23 confirmed victories. Iron Cross First Class pinned to his chest. At 27, he's what the Luftwaffe calls Überlebenskünstler, a survival artist. He's laughing. Not a nervous laugh. A confident, almost pitying laugh that crackles through the radio to his wingman. More bombers without shepherds, Klaus. They send these Terrorflieger to us like Christmas presents. His assessment isn't arrogance, it's mathematics. Cold, German precision mathematics. The Boeing B-17, as lumbering toward Berlin, can cruise at 182 miles per hour. His Bf 109 Maxes at 398. The bomber's defensive guns have an effective range of maybe 1,000 yards in perfect conditions. His 20 mm cannon? Accurate at 1,200 yards, with ammunition that can tear through aluminum like paper. Range? That's where the Americans lose. The P-47. Thunderbolt Escorts. Excellent aircraft, Stigler admits, can only accompany the bombers 475 miles from England before their fuel tanks run dry. Berlin sits 600 miles from the English coast. That 125-mile gap? That's the Todeszone, the death zone, where German fighters feast. They can't protect what they can't reach, Stigler mutters, rolling his fighter into an attack position. And they'll never reach Berlin. His engine roars. His finger moves to the trigger. The bomber formation ahead looks vulnerable, exposed, exactly as expected. What Franz Stigler didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 4,000 feet below, painted in olive drab and glinting in the March sun, a fighter was already there. One that could fly 1,650 miles without stopping. One that turned every assumption about aerial warfare into smoking wreckage. And it was about to make him a liar. Rewind 8 months. July 1943. Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. 94 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade. Humidity thick enough to chew. Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Hitchcock stands in front of a silver aircraft that most of the Army Air Forces wants to throw in the scrap heap. The North American P-51 Mustang. Elegant lines, gorgeous aircraft. Completely useless. At least, that's what the evaluation reports say. The original Allison V1, 1,710 engine, gives it decent low-altitude performance, but wheezes above 15,000 feet like a chain smoker climbing stairs. Strategic bombing happens at 20,000 to 30,000 feet. Do the math. A beautiful plane, one general said during appropriations meetings, for an obsolete mission. The P-47. Thunderbolt gets the contracts. 8.50 caliber machine guns. Radial engine that can absorb punishment. It's the natural escort choice. Except it can't reach Berlin. Hitchcock wipes sweat from his forehead. His uniform sticks to his back. He's an aristocrat by birth. Old money, polo player, Hollywood connections. But he volunteered for combat duty in 1918 and again in 1940. He's not here for show. He's here because he sees what others miss. The airframe is perfect, he tells Major Thomas, the skeptical engineering officer beside him. We're using the wrong engine. The Allison tests showed... Forget the Allison. What about Rolls-Royce? Thomas blinks. The British Merlin? The British Merlin. Here's what Hitchcock knows that the bureaucrats don't. The British have been flying the Merlin engine in their Spitfires for years. Two-stage supercharger. At 25,000 feet, it doesn't just survive, it thrives. Power actually increases with altitude. The problem? It's British. Made in England. The Packard Motor Company has licensed production rights, but American pride runs deep. Why would you put a British engine in an American fighter? Because physics doesn't care about nationalism. It'll never get approved, Thomas says. Procurement's already committed to the Thunderbolt program. Millions invested. Hitchcock lights a cigarette. The smoke curls in the stagnant air. Then we don't ask permission. We build one. Prove it works. Make them say no to results. 3 weeks later, engineers at Rolls-Royce in England receive an unusual request. They're told it's priority 1. Ship a Merlin engine to California immediately. By October 1943, the first XP-51B prototype runs on a Packard-built Merlin V1653. The test pilot throttles up to 30,000 feet. The engine sings. Speed at altitude, 441 miles per hour. Faster than almost every German fighter in production. But speed isn't the revelation. Range is. The Mustang's laminar flow wing design, mocked as overcomplicated by competitors, creates minimal drag. Fuel efficiency skyrockets. Add the Merlin's sipping efficiency, then bolt on 2 108-gallon drop tanks under the wings. Run the calculations. 1,650 miles. Enough to fly from England to Berlin and back with fuel to spare for a dogfight over the target. The report lands on General Henry Hap Arnold's desk in November. He reads it 3 times. Are these numbers real? They're real. But there's a problem. Production. The factories are committed to building P-47S. Retooling takes time. Months. Maybe a full year to get enough Mustangs operational. Meanwhile, in Europe, the bomber crews are dying. 8th Air Force Bomber Command loses 176 aircraft in October 1943 alone during Black Week. Missions deep into Germany without adequate escort. That's 1,760 men. Dead, captured, or broken. The crews call missions beyond P-47 range maximum effort. The pilots have a different name. They call them extermination runs. Second Lieutenant Robert Johnson, a B-17 co-pilot with the 390th Bomb Group, writes home to his mother in Kansas. We play a game. Count how many fighters we see before the escorts turn back. Yesterday, I counted 37 Germans waiting for us. They circle just outside gun range, like sharks. They know exactly when our friends have to leave. Then they come in. Ma, I don't think I'm making it to 25 missions. He's 22 years old. The crew survival rate for completing a 25-mission tour, roughly 25%. 1 in 4. Back in Ohio, assembly lines start converting. P-51B Mustangs with Merlin engines. Olive drab paint. White stars on the wings. 800 ordered for immediate delivery. But even rush orders take time. While American factories retool, German pilots rule the skies above Berlin. December 1943. Debden Airfield, Essex, England. 31 degrees Fahrenheit. Frost on the runway. Captain Clarence Bud Anderson walks around his new aircraft for the first time. The paint still smells fresh. He runs his glove along the wing's leading edge, smooth, almost glassy. Nothing like the riveted, corrugated surface of the P-47 he flew last month. She's a racer, his crew chief says, grinning. Not a fighter. a racer that happens to have guns. Anderson doesn't respond. He's doing math in his head. Empty weight, 7,635 pounds. The Thunderbolt weighs 10,000 empty. That's 2,365 pounds of difference. In aviation, weight is sin. Less weight means more speed, more climb rate, more maneuverability. When do we get to fly her? Tomorrow, if the weather clears. It doesn't clear tomorrow, or the next day. Fog blankets England through Christmas. The Mustangs sit idle while bomber crews continue bleeding over Germany. January 1944. The weather breaks. The 354th Fighter Group, the first unit fully equipped with P-51Bs, launches its first long-range escort mission. Target: Kiel, Germany, 450 miles from base. Major James Howard leads the formation. 24 Mustangs climbing through broken clouds. They rendezvous with B-17S over the North Sea at 10:15 hours. The bomber crews don't know what they're seeing at first. "What are those?" one waist gunner asks over intercom, watching the sleek fighters slot into position. Not Thunderbolts. Not Spitfires either. The Mustangs have a profile unlike anything in the theater. Long nose, bubble canopy on later models. That distinctive scoop under the fuselage for the radiator. Are those ours? They're about to find out. 11:47 hours. German border. The Luftwaffe appears right on schedule. 12 Bf-109s diving from 28,000 feet. Stigler isn't among them today, but the tactics are identical. Hit the bombers when they're undefended. Standard procedure since 1942. Except today, the bombers aren't undefended. Major Howard sees the Germans first. "Bandits, 2 o'clock high. Stay with the bombers." The P-51s turn into the threat. Here's what the German pilots expect. The escorts will engage, burn fuel in the dogfight, then have to withdraw. 30 minutes of combat maximum before their tanks run dry. Here's what actually happens. The Mustangs fight for 30 minutes, then 45, then an hour. They're still there. One German pilot, Unteroffizier Wilhelm Schmidt, will later tell interrogators, "We assumed they were a special short-range unit staging from Holland. No one told us the Americans had fighters that could stay this long. When we broke off to refuel, they were still circling the bombers. We thought reinforcements had arrived. They were the same aircraft." Schmidt survives the war. 78 of his squadron mates don't. The January mission results. All bombers return safely. 3 Bf-109s destroyed. 0 Mustangs lost. But it's one mission, an anomaly. The Luftwaffe isn't worried yet. February 1944. Production increases. More P-51s arrive weekly. The 4th Fighter Group converts. Then the 357th. The distinctive silver fighters, some units skip the paint to save weight, start appearing deeper and deeper into German airspace. February 20th, a formation reaches Brunswick, 370 miles in. February 25th, Stuttgart, 400 miles. March 3rd, 38 P-51S escort bombers to the outskirts of Berlin itself. They don't enter the city's airspace, still testing range limits, but they get close enough to see the smoke from the Reichstag. Close enough to send a message. The Luftwaffe command holds an emergency meeting in Berlin. The transcript survives in archives. General Adolf Galland, General of the Fighter Arm. How are they doing this? Intelligence officer. Our analysts believe they're using external fuel tanks. Galand. Everyone uses drop tanks. That doesn't explain Berlin. Intelligence officer. Very large drop tanks, Herr General, and the airframe appears more efficient than anticipated. Galanthand. More efficient? By how much? Intelligence officer. Our best estimate. They can remain over Germany for 90 minutes. Perhaps more. Silence in the room. 90 minutes. Long enough to escort bombers to any target in the Reich. Long enough to dogfight the entire Luftwaffe response. Long enough to destroy the fundamental defensive strategy Germany's relied on since 1942. Galand, one of the finest tactical minds in the Luftwaffe, understands immediately. This changes everything. But understanding a problem and solving it are different things. The Germans have excellent fighters. The Focke-Wulf FWI 190 and Bf 109 remain formidable, but they're designed for high-performance intercepts, short, brutal engagements optimized for climbing to bomber altitude quickly. Range? Not a priority when you're defending your own territory. Land, refuel, rearm, and launch again. The airport is always close. That doctrine works brilliantly when the enemy escorts turn back. It fails catastrophically when the escorts never leave. March 4th, 1944. The weather over Germany is perfect. Clear skies, unlimited visibility. 8th Air Force launches the largest daylight raid of the war. Target, Berlin. 658 heavy bombers, B-17S and B-24S, each carrying 4,000 pounds of high explosive and incendiary ordnance. Escorting them, 801 fighters. Over half are P-51 Mustangs. The Armada crosses the Dutch coast at 0947 hours. The formation is so large that German radar operators initially think their equipment is malfunctioning. Sir, the scope shows. It appears to show over 1,000 aircraft. Recalibrate your set. It's already calibrated, they're real. Every available Luftwaffe fighter in northern Germany scrambles. Bf 109S, FWI 190S. A few of the new Me-262 jets still in testing. Over 450 German fighters. The largest aerial battle in history is about to begin. And Franz Stigler, the pilot who laughed about unescorted bombers 2 weeks ago, is about to learn what terror feels like. March 6, 1944. 12:03 hours. 24,000 feet above Berlin. Stigler's Bf 109 shakes from the G-forces as he pulls out of a dive. He's just made a firing pass on a B-17. Saw his cannon rounds impact the wing root, but he had to break off. A Silver fighter was on him in seconds. Not a Thunderbolt, something faster. Something that turned with him through the dive and nearly matched his roll rate. His radio is chaos. Brake left! Brake left! I can't shake him! Where did they all come from? Stigler levels out, scanning for threats. His situational awareness, trained through 2 years of combat, is screaming warnings. Something is wrong. The sky is full of American fighters, not just escorting, hunting. He sees a Mustang 800 yards to his right, slightly above. It's trailing a FW 190, but both aircraft in a tight spiral. The Mustang is inside the turn. Impossible. The FW 190 has one of the best roll rates in the Luftwaffe. The Mustang fires. Short burst. The Focke-Wulf comes apart in a spray of aluminum and flame. Hans, on your 6. Stigler snaps his head around. Another Silver fighter closing at impossible speed. He slams the throttle forward, dives. The Mustang follows. 4,000 feet, 6,000, 8,000 feet lost in seconds. The Mustang is still there. Stigler pulls out at 12,000 feet, redlines his engine. The Messerschmitt vibrates, screaming. He's at maximum power, maximum speed. The American is matching him. Worse, he's gaining. Stigler has no choice. He breaks off, heads for Jüterbog airfield, 30 miles south. His fuel gauge reads critically low. Another 3 minutes and he'll be gliding. The Mustang doesn't pursue. It pulls up, climbs back to the bomber formations. It still has fuel. Stigler lands at 12:21 hours. His hands are shaking when he climbs out of the cockpit. Not from fear, he's been shot at hundreds of times, but from the realization crystallizing in his mind. The rules just changed. Across the battlefield, similar scenes repeat. Oberfeldwebel Heinz Canuck, 31 victories, diving on a B-17 formation near Potsdam. He's lining up his shot when tracers flash past his canopy. A Mustang, where did it come from, is firing from 1,100 yards, effective range. He abandons the attack, tries to engage the fighter. The Mustang accelerates away, not fleeing, repositioning. When Canuck tries to follow, 2 more appear on his flanks. He's outnumbered in his own sky. He runs. Hauptmann Walter Dahl, brilliant tactician, leading 12 Bf-109s in a coordinated attack. His unit uses a devastating formation technique. String out, attack from multiple angles, overwhelm the bomber gunners with targets. They make their approach at 12:15 hours. The P-51s see them coming. 6 Mustangs break from the escort screen, climb to intercept. Dahl expects them to burn through their fuel in the engagement, creating an opening. 15 minutes later, the same 6 Mustangs are still fighting. His formation is scattered. 2 of his pilots are dead. 3 more damaged and fleeing. The Americans aren't leaving. Dahl retreats, regroups, tries again at 12:47 hours with reinforcements. 18 fighters total. The Mustangs are still there. They've been over Berlin for over an hour, still escorting, still fighting. It's impossible. Except it's happening. At 12:56 hours, Major James Howard, the same pilot who led that first Kiel mission, finds himself alone with a formation of B-17s. His wingmen crashed, his squadron scattered in the chaos. Just him and 30 bombers. 6 Bf-109s appear. Setting up for an attack run, Howard doesn't retreat to find his unit. He attacks. 1 man, 6 Germans. He dives into the formation, guns blazing. The surprise works. 2 Bf-109s collide, trying to evade. A third takes hits and streams smoke. The remaining 3 break off, confused, trying to figure out how many Americans they're actually facing. Howard stays with the bombers. Alone. Outnumbered. For 14 minutes he fights off multiple attacks, damaging 2 more German fighters, preventing any bombers in his section from being hit. The B-17 crews watch in awe. Who is that guy? I don't know, but buy him a drink when we get home. Howard will receive the Medal of Honor, the only fighter pilot in the European theater to earn it. But his heroics aren't the story. The story is that he could do it at all. His P-51 carried enough fuel for those 14 minutes of combat and still had reserves to reach England. A P-47 would have been gliding into a German field. By 13:20 hours, the bomber formations are turning for home. The damage assessment over Berlin: 69,000 incendiary clusters dropped, 1,600 tons of high explosives, fires burning in 14 districts, Reichstag area hit repeatedly, railway yards demolished, German fighter effectiveness catastrophically reduced. Of 658 bombers, the Luftwaffe manages to destroy only 37. That's 5.6% losses. In October 1943's Black Week, unescorted bombers took losses of 26%. The math is brutal. With P-47 limited escorts, 1 in 4 bombers die. With P-51 full escorts, 1 in 18. But the bomber losses aren't the revelation that breaks the Luftwaffe's spirit. It's the fighter losses. The Germans lose 66 aircraft over Berlin. 66, including 12 pilots with over 20 victories each. Irreplaceable expertise. The Americans lose 11 fighters. 6-to-1 kill ratio in Germany's own airspace over their capital. That evening, Stigler sits in the pilot-ready room at Jüterbog, staring at his empty schnapps glass. Around him, the surviving pilots are silent. No celebration, no battle stories. Someone finally speaks. How do we fight this? No one answers. Because the truth, unspoken but understood, is that they can't. Not if the Americans can escort all the way to Berlin. Not if those silver fighters can stay for the entire battle. Not if German pilots have to fight from takeoff to landing without sanctuary. Galland arrives at the field that night. He walks through the ready room, looks at the exhausted faces, the empty chairs where men sat this morning. He already knows what the reports will say. The strategic situation has collapsed. Stigler looks up. Herr General, what are our orders? Galland's face is stone. Fight. Make them pay for every mile. It's not an answer. It's a eulogy. The Luftwaffe will continue fighting for another 13 months. But March 6, 1944, is the day they lose. They just don't know it yet. March through May 1944. The destruction accelerates. The 8th Air Force launches coordinated strikes deeper and deeper into the Reich. Every industrial center, every synthetic fuel plant, every aircraft factory. The P-51s go everywhere. March 8th, Berlin again, 623 bombers, 891 escorts. March 15th, Brunswick and Hanover. Railway infrastructure obliterated. March 22nd, Berlin, third time. Luftwaffe loses 59 fighters. Americans lose 12. April 8th, Erkner and Tutow. Aircraft factories producing FW-190S. Production drops 34% overnight. April 11th, the largest air battle of the war. Over 1,000 bombers, 850 fighters. The Luftwaffe scrambles everything, including training units with student pilots flying their first combat mission. It's a massacre. The Germans lose 89 aircraft. Many pilots are teenagers with less than 20 hours in type. They're thrown against pilots like Captain Don Gentile, 21 victories, and Captain John Godfrey, 16 victories, flying aircraft that outperform everything Germany has. Gentile will describe it later. It wasn't a battle. It was, I don't know what to call it. They kept coming, kept dying. Kids who didn't know how to fight. We didn't celebrate that night. By April 15th, the statistical reality is undeniable. Luftwaffe fighter pilot life expectancy, 30 combat missions before death or incapacitation. Average missions required to develop combat proficiency, 40. The math doesn't work. They're dying before they learn to survive. Training schools empty. Replacement pilots arrive at frontline units with barely functional skills. Groupie commanders receive 17-year-olds who've never fired their guns in combat conditions. Franz Stigler, now promoted to Hauptmann and leading a Staffel, watches a new pilot taxi his Bf-109 into a ditch on his second day. How many hours does he have? Stigler asks. Total? Or in the 109? Total, 46. Stigler laughs, bitter, hollow. I had 320 before I flew combat. We're sending them to die. But the replacements keep coming because the alternative is surrender. May 1944. The Luftwaffe tries new tactics. Through Operation Sturmbach, heavily armored WWII 190 AS. Flying in tight formation, making single, devastating passes on bomber formations before withdrawing. The armor makes them nearly immune to defensive fire. The doctrine works when they reach the bombers. They rarely reach the bombers. The P-51s intercept miles before the attack point. The Sturmbach are slow, optimized for armor over speed. The Mustangs pick them apart before they can deploy. Gefechtsverband tactics. Entire Geschwaders, 3 full groups, over 100 fighters, launching coordinated assaults from multiple altitudes. Overwhelm the escorts through sheer numbers. May 12th, Zwickau raid. 96 Luftwaffe fighters attack. The American escort rotates in shifts, fresh P-51s cycling in as others withdraw to refuel in England or France. The Germans fight until their fuel is gone. Result: 26 German losses, 4 American. The Gefechtsverband never tries it again. By late May, the Luftwaffe's operational fighter strength is half what it was in January. Not from lack of aircraft, the factories are still producing, but from lack of pilots. The training pipeline can't keep up with casualties. General Galland presents the statistics to Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring in a May 29th conference. The transcript: Galland, at current attrition rates, will have no experienced fighter pilots by September. Göring, then train more. Galland, we're losing them faster than we can train them. The Americans have air superiority over Germany itself. Göring, impossible. We have more fighters than ever. Galland, aircraft, yes. Pilots, no. And the fighters they do have, Herr Reichsmarschall, their Mustangs are better. Göring, better than German engineering? Galland, they outrange us, outrun us, and there are hundreds of them. Göring dismisses the meeting, orders Galland to stop making excuses. But the truth spreads through the ranks. In the pilot-ready rooms, experienced survivors quietly tell the new replacements what to expect. If you see silver fighters with stars, run. Don't fight. Don't try to be a hero. Just run. Maybe you'll live long enough to learn something. Some listen. Most die anyway. June 6, 1944. D-Day. Allied invasion of Normandy. The Luftwaffe's response is anemic. They manage only 319 sorties, total, over the beaches. The Allies fly over 14,000. P-51s patrol from dawn to dusk. Any German aircraft that approaches the invasion zone is swarmed, destroyed, or forced to flee without attacking. German infantry watch the sky, praying for air support that never comes. They thought the Luftwaffe was invincible. Where did it go? It went to die over Berlin. July 1944. The bomber offensive shifts targets. Oil, synthetic fuel plants that keep the Wehrmacht mobile. Leuna, Politz, Bolin, Hamburg. The P-51s escort every mission. The refineries burn. German fuel production drops 90% by August. Tanks don't move. Trucks sit idle. Training flights for Luftwaffe pilots are cancelled. No fuel to waste. The fighters that do fly often run out mid-mission, glide into fields, get strafed by Mustangs on the ground. August 1944. The United States produces 1,621 P-51 Mustangs in a single month. Germany produces 1,220 Bf-109s and has fuel to fly maybe 300. The war is over. The fighting continues, but the outcome is no longer in doubt. October 1944. Franz Stigler is forced to bail out after his third aircraft is shot down, this time by a P-51 over München. He survives with burns and a shattered leg. While recovering, he writes in his journal, "They were supposed to be the inferior pilots, the careless Americans who couldn't match German discipline. I believed that. We all believed it. We were wrong. Not because they're better pilots, though many are, but because they have better tools, and more of them, and they never stop coming. You can't win a war where the enemy controls your sky. We learned that in 1918. We forgot. The Mustang made us remember. He'll survive the war, emigrate to Canada, become a businessman. In 1986, he'll meet Lieutenant Charles Brown, a B-17 pilot he spared in 1943 after the bomber was crippled over Germany. Stigler, despite having the helpless bomber in his sights, chose humanity over orders. Let him limp home. They'll become best friends. Brown will be at Stigler's bedside when he dies in 2008. But that mercy in 1943 was an exception. By 1944, there was no mercy, just math. And the math said Germany couldn't win. September 2nd, 1945, Tokyo Bay, USS Missouri. The surrender documents are signed. The global conflict ends. Final statistics for the P-51 Mustang in European theater operations. Anteditions, total destroyed enemy aircraft, 4,950 in aerial combat. Additional ground targets destroyed, 4,131 aircraft strafed on airfields, total Mustangs lost. 2,520. Kill-to-death ratio, 3.6 to 1, conservative estimate. But the numbers don't capture the real impact. The real impact was strategic. Before the P-51, long-range bombing was unsustainable, losses too high, missions beyond 400 miles were near suicidal. After the P-51, nowhere in Germany was safe. Not the capital, not the industrial heartland, not the remote Alpine factories. Total war came home to the Third Reich. The Mustang didn't win the war alone. Soviet advances in the East, Allied landings in the West, economic collapse, strategic blunders by German leadership, all contributed. But the P-51 broke the Luftwaffe. And without air superiority, Germany couldn't defend its cities, protect its factories, or support its armies. Everything else followed. The aircraft itself, designed in 117 days by a team led by James Kindleberger and Edgar Schmood, became one of the most produced fighters in history. Over 15,000 built. Variants served into the Korean War. It shouldn't have worked. An American airframe with a British engine rushed into production despite institutional resistance, piloted by crews who'd been losing for 2 years. But it did work. Because sometimes the underdog wins, not through luck, not through miracles, through engineering, production, logistics, determination. Through recognizing that the old rules, range doesn't matter when defending, escorts can't reach Berlin, German discipline beats American enthusiasm, were based on assumptions, not physics. And assumptions shatter when someone builds a better machine. March 6, 1944, the day German pilots stopped laughing. The day Franz Stigler realized his sky was no longer his. The day the P-51 Mustang proved that wars aren't won by who strikes first, but by who can strike last. and strike anywhere. The bombers kept coming. The escorts never left. Berlin burned. The Luftwaffe broke. And the world learned a lesson that echoes through military doctrine today. Control of the air is control of the battlefield. Lose the sky, lose the war. The Germans scoffed at unescorted bombers. Then the escorts arrived, and there was nothing left to scoff about. Just the roar of Merlin engines, the flash of .50 caliber tracers, and the smoke rising from a capital that thought itself untouchable. The Mustang made them touchable. The rest was just mathematics.